All right. Hoping that works. Hey, if you're in here, let me know if you're getting sound or not. Uh, hmm. Yeah, let me know if you guys are getting sound. Hey, okay, great. Thanks, Emotion VFX. Awesome. Thanks, man. That really helps me out. Cool. All right. Everything looks like it's set up then. Great. Glad you can make it, Emotion. We'll get some people in. Go ahead and let me know any questions you might have. You got me all to yourself, I think, right now. Wait for some people to come in. Also crack open one of these. See here. A lot of stuff I'm going to be going over. Let's see. I'll be going over the red Komodo. The red Komodo has finally made an appearance in the wild. So I'll talk about that. Red Komodo 6K camera. 6K is right because it'll be $6,000. Not really that impressed with the sample footage, but to be honest, I'm not sure what we can expect anymore until there's a major shift in imaging for sensor imaging and all that kind of stuff. I finally bought something I had my eye on for a while, which was an Edelkrone slider. But yeah, that was actually a really good experience I had with that. It was wonderful, actually. I was really surprised with how great it worked and how quickly it was put together for the shoot. So pretty awesome. And then talk about Fujilog and my experience so far with using it, and what I'm seeing is the major problem people are having, which is that they're not using the right color space. So yeah, let's see. Any idea on the LUT I can get into the Meta? I'm not sure what you're talking about, Emotion VFX. Any idea on the LUT I can get into the Meta? I updated my P4K. Oh, so I just explain the situation. And if you have to send me an email to explain it in greater detail, go ahead and do that. But did you have LUTs in the Pocket 4K, then you updated the software, and now the LUTs are gone? Is that what you're saying? Or, just explain so that I can understand your question a little bit more. Or if it's the meta as far as like in the file itself, it should be, if you go into Resolve and you go into the raw tab at the bottom, you should see a little click box or check box that says apply LUT, and you can do it there. I wouldn't really do that. I don't like doing it that way, but you can do it there. And I think if you look in the metadata, you can find it. Updated P4K. Now there is a LUT option. Never had that before. Let me look at what you're talking about. So I can try to see it. Record Video, flowless card, apply. You mean where it says apply LUT in file? Is that what you're talking about? Because I think all that is putting the LUT as accessible in your file. So like when you go, if you have that on, it shouldn't bake in the LUT if you do that with BRAW because it's not going to bake it in. But if you have apply LUT in file, it should just save the information for that LUT in the file. So that way when you go into RAW, you can just hit that little tick box and it applies it. Now, where that might be useful is probably like for editing. I mean, if you're just editing Blackmagic Raw and you're not using a lefty loosey, righty tighty, come on now. That might be useful if you're editing and you're editing and you don't want to make a proxy file or something like that and you want to see what it's supposed to look like. That's probably where that's useful, but I don't apply it that way. But yeah, I mean, that I think is the only real difference that you're going to see there. Yeah, I guess some people wanted that. It's all good. Does that help? So yeah, So one of the things I want to talk about today is the Fujilog stuff, because I shoot with like this. This is a Fuji camera that is shooting this right now, and I was looking at getting a second camera because I want something that's either 10-bit internal, either 10-bit internal, or get like the Pocket 6K because it's $2,000. But with the Fujilog, I kept seeing that people were complaining about the colors, the color science, and I'm like, if it's a 10-bit file, you should be able to have enough colors to correct any issues. So issues that people are having, I'll dig into that later because I think it's just the way that they're using the footage, but I will need some more footage from people so that I can see what's wrong. I was seeing where there were complaints where someone was shooting in tungsten with a tungsten white balance and it looked wrong to them. And there's some reasons for that, and I'll go into all this a little bit later. So stick around. But we're in the early section, so we're not a lot of people are usually here. So just in time to round. Hey, cheap ass reviews, good to see you. Just in time to round out your workday. Yeah, man. That's why I do these on the weekdays. I don't want you guys sitting around on a Friday evening when you maybe need to be out doing something else. So that's why I'm here at this time. I think the new firmware that he's talking about, he just had been waiting to update. Could have been for various reasons, but yeah, I don't remember what else was in that new firmware. But yeah, let's see here. So as usual, since this is the very, very early section of the stream, I'll talk about a couple things. Not specific to the segments I'll be talking about, but just a couple things, cleaning house, all those kinds of things. Because usually the people who come in early are people who like the channel more, so you get more information. So yeah, yeah, and Emotion VFX, it's a good idea. Like that's really smart what you're doing. If there's a new firmware update, good thing to wait and let other people beta test it, because chances are they're going to find problems and you're not going to be a victim. I remember I read on the Blackmagic forums, there was an update for one of the Ursas, and it like one guy updated their firmware for the camera and it ruined their shoot. Like there was a big problem with the update, and it was like doing something weird with clipping highlights. It was doing something really, really weird. And Blackmagic Design had to pull the update because it was a serious bug. Yeah, let other people beta test the software. I don't know Blackmagic Design. I used to work in QA. If you need somebody who's really good at doing QA, send me an email because I will make sure that that kind of thing doesn't happen. Yeah, never update. Never be one of the first people to update. It's also a good thing not to be one of the first people to buy a new thing like a device because you'll probably be beta testing it too. That's what I did with the Pocket 4K. But I knew I wasn't going to get one for like a year if I waited. So, all right. So let's see here for today. Yeah. So first of all, a little house cleaning. The streams, doing the segments and putting them online was not a good idea. Every time I popped in like maybe several a day because it was going to need, in order to get everything out, I was going to need to upload like maybe 5 per day. So I was trying not to overload people. But every time I had like a bunch put in, I'd like lose a lot of subscribers. So I'm not sure why. It's probably because it was flooding their inboxes and flooding their feed, which I hate too. So I was like, oh, I didn't realize that. So I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to put one big edit of the whole thing and post that. I'm behind. There's reasons for that. I'm working. I think I mentioned it before. If you're familiar with my streams, like this isn't what I do for my full-time job. I have a regular job where I do mainly educational and corporate video kind of stuff. I have a side video shoot that I'm doing for a lab. And then I have an augmented reality app that is due. So I'm doing a bunch of things at the same time. So I'm trying to get all this stuff uploaded like as soon as possible. But it's going to take some time, and it will be just like one like hour and a half to 2 hour long thing. So VFX Todd, can you clarify your question? What do you mean? What do I shoot? Like, are you talking about equipment? Are you talking about subject matter? Like, what are you talking about? So yeah, that's what I'm going to do for the streams. For you guys who are usually here, probably doesn't matter to you because you've already seen it. But that's how I'm going to upload them. So yeah, I also want to talk about some movies real quick, because I watched some movies and it reminded me of some things that I haven't talked to you guys about. But first of all, I think it was a couple weeks ago, I saw The Stuff for the first time. Awesome movie. It's basically about a food product that will kill you from the inside. It's amazing. Like totally recommended. There's only one part that's kind of cliche, but that's the only part I don't like. The lead character is hilarious, and so is a Chocolate Chip Charlie. They're wonderful. I saw Return of the Killer Tomatoes again, and I had a few years ago, my friend kept telling me about it, and I did not believe him that it was going to be any good. It's hilarious. This is the second or third time for me watching it, and I forgot how funny it is. Definitely recommend Return of the Killer Tomatoes. Has a young George Clooney in it, and it's shot in my hometown, San Diego, so totally recommended Return of the Killer Tomatoes. Miami Connection, it's probably the 10th time I've seen it. I do like movie watch parties, and this was on there again, and it's just hilarious. But I wanted to talk also about, we had like a bad superhero movie night, and there's a ton of them. Like I've seen the Roger Corman Fantastic Four. It's probably in my opinion the best Fantastic Four movie. But you know, movies like that, we watched for this one, we watched oh yeah, some other ones that I've seen, like there was a Wonder Woman movie, or is it Supergirl? I think it was Supergirl actually, and it's just awful. But we had this bad superhero movie night, and we watched the old Doctor Strange that has oh my gosh, what's her name? Actress yeah, Jessica Walter. And if you're not familiar with Jessica Walter, this is like, I think from the 70s, like the movie is from the 70s or early 80s, I don't remember. and she plays Archer's mom in Archer and Lucille Bluth in Arrested Development. So she's basically the exact same character, but yeah, she's in it. I actually didn't hate it. It was all right. There's some really funny stuff in it because it's kind of cheap. And we saw like the older Captain America movie. It's like made for TV and it's really, really stupid. But we saw Batman Forever, and I forgot, like, every time I see Batman Forever, because I usually see like Batman and Robin on a bad movie night. I've seen it, I don't know how many times, because it's so bad that it needs to be seen. But Batman Forever, every time I see it, I like it's almost like I don't remember how disappointing it was when I was a kid to see it in theaters, because the it was such a huge contrast to what I liked, which was the 89 Batman, which was the 89 one, and I think it was a 1993 Batman Returns, which were done by Tim Burton. And his vision for Batman was not what everyone else was expecting. In fact, many people were like, oh, you know, this is going to be really bad. Michael Keaton as Batman, that'll never work. He's a comedy actor. How is that ever going to work for a Batman movie? And Tim Burton, how is it going to be dark? It needs to be like the old Adam West stuff. And you know, people ended up loving them. Like, Batman Returns is one of my favorite Batman movies, simply because Danny DeVito's in it as the Penguin, and he's disgusting in that role, and it's wonderful. But Batman Forever, dude, it's so bad. Like, and it starts off horrible, because there's this scene where a cop is kind of like in trouble with Batman, and the cop is the most annoying character in any Batman movie ever made. He's so irritating, and it sets the tone for the entire film. Like, I feel like that. And the only saving grace of it is that Jim Carrey is so insane as the Riddler that it just works for me. Like, his character is the only reason I can get through the movie. And it's so funny because Tommy Lee Jones hated working with him in that film. Yeah, I forget what the quote was, but he said something like, "I cannot abide your something." I forget what the term he used was, but evidently Tommy Lee Jones did not enjoy working on that. But yeah, good good movie nights. You know, good stuff. If you do not watch movies on the regular, totally recommended. And definitely watch bad movies, like bad B films. Pretty awesome. They can be a lot of fun. Let's check the chat. What do you shoot? VFX Todd says, yeah, when you just want to shoot anything just to use it, is there any subject matter that you're drawn to? So, excuse me. So the kind of stuff that I do, if it's just me not working, is going to be for a lot of other people kind of boring stuff. When I was living in North Carolina, I would go to the Duke Gardens a lot, and I would shoot like the different insects and the flowers and the different gardens in there all the time, because that's how I relax. You know, like when I'm there doing my thing, like I can just focus on just capturing one little moment. And I think it's awkward. So there's a couple things. Okay. First, I get exercise. Second, I get to, you know, practice, and I get to do what I like to do with the camera. So, and you can spend that time trying to do a number of different things with the camera. You can practice panning and tilting. You can practice just your compositions. You can practice a number of different things. You can do tricks, like if you want to do some post effects blending, like if you shoot two different exposures and you want to blend the sky from one shot with the everything else from the second shot so that you can get that really high dynamic range. Those are good times to test that out because you can do whatever you want with footage like that and nobody's going to care. So that's what I do. And then the other thing is I don't really like street videography that a lot of people kind of do, where they do handheld stuff. The reason why is because I think it's a little creepy to follow random people around and then try to like get shots of them. It might just be me, but I wouldn't really like that. And then I wouldn't want to like shoot those people and then post that online. Like I wouldn't appreciate if someone just randomly shooting me and then put me online or whatever. It just seems kind of weird. So I know that street photographers would get mad at me for thinking that, but that's just my opinion. So I don't really do that. So I'd rather shoot something like bugs or plants or whatever. It just ends up being less of a problem, in my opinion. So yeah, and then some other things that I do is if I want to donate my time to something, I'll do that as well with the pocket camera. So like, shooting interviews with people for whatever it is that they might be doing, if there's someone doing something good in the neighborhood, I would want to do that. Like right now I can't really do that because of COVID, but that's the kind of thing that I would do. So for work though, with the Pocket 4K, you can do anything. Like really, you can do pretty much anything with the Pocket 4K, and it's not going to be a problem. The only things that the Pocket 4K might have trouble with might be something like exteriors where you have absolutely no control over the lights because you don't have the dynamic range to deal with a naked bald sky. But if you're shooting anything inside, even at the higher ISO, like 3200 ISO, dude, you're going to be perfectly fine. There's a like a short film idea that I have that I'm currently doing some spec stuff for. That'll be fun, but that's the kind of stuff that I do with the Pocket 4K. It's just a good all-arounder, small, cheap camera for that. Okay. Let's see here. I have 40 hours of an Ocarina of Time walkthrough where they're all unlisted, but the playlist is public. So if people want to watch them, they can, but people didn't see in their stream at the time. I'm not sure what you mean. For the streams? Because you're asking about like why not put the live streams up after? It's because like I like cutting out the dead space, and if I slip on something, I kind of don't want that to stay. If I have the wrong information about something, which I caught on one, it was very short, but I just want to make sure I cut that kind of thing out, so that I don't get people the wrong information. That's all. Like that's my thing about it. Maybe I can just do that and it's not going to be a problem, but I'm still thinking about it. Like I might just do that. It might be smarter to do it that way, like you're saying. Have a look at Amazon Prime's Little Fires Everywhere. Strange storytelling going into scenes without resolving the issues. So half of the thing is made up in the head instead of on screen. Yeah, dude. There's a lot of stuff on Amazon Prime. Last Vampire on Earth. The Last Vampire on Earth. I think that's on Amazon Prime. Amazing film. Strongly recommended. It's a thing. Oh man, what was the other one? It was a werewolf one that was on there that we saw. I can't remember it right now. It's like it's lycanthrope. It has lichen colony. That's it. Lichen colony. Watch those movies. They're amazing. Okay. Totally agree with street photography is creepy, especially when posted online. Yeah, dude, I don't I don't really like that. I don't know what it is. Like, it's not like I don't like the footage. It's not that I don't think it looks good or something. I just feel like it's a little stalkery and stuff. It just seems weird. Aeon, the Last Vampire on Earth. I don't think that's the one I'm thinking of. Yeah, hold on a second. Oh, this is a YouTube version. I don't know about Aeon. It's just called this. It's done in 2009. Oh, wait, is it on? Let me see here real quick. I'll send you a link to it. It's incredible. Yeah, here it is. Watch this one. That's the one. Wonderful Garbage. Wonderful. It's a wonderful film. Yeah. Talking about Last Vampire on Earth up in here. All right. Just real quick, we got more people in here, so we'll probably start doing the segments. Yeah. So just to recap, this is what we're going to talk about for this one. We're going to talk about the Red Komodo 6K and my thoughts on it. Going to talk about the Edelkrone Slider 1. It's a V2, Slider 1 V2. So whatever that means. And I'm going to talk about working with Fujilog because you can actually take a lot of what I'm going to talk about with Fujilog and apply it to other codecs or gammas or whatever, because a lot of times, and I'll talk about it later, but a lot of times the struggles that people are having with their footage, doesn't matter what camera they're using. It doesn't really matter what camera they're using or whatever. The struggles that they have is that they're trying to work in a color space that they can't really view properly. And that seems to be the problem. So I'll talk about that. Okay. So the Red Komodo 6K. So in case you guys are not aware, Red is a company, Red Camera. They have been creating a 6K camera for, I think, 5 years. I think it was like 5 years they were working on this camera. It's a 6K camera that's pretty small. It's about 2 pounds. It's a box. It has a Canon RF mount. Some of the other things with it has a global shutter, which is cool. It can record red code RAW. It has a bunch of things. Okay, it says a touchscreen display, but I don't know what they're talking about with that. I'd have to see it. The size is 4x4, I guess 4 inches by 4 inches, 10.16 centimeters by 10.16 centimeters. So it also has phase detection, autofocus. So a lot of interesting things. And the price is going to be $6,000, $6,000 US dollars. So this is what's interesting about the Red camera. First of all, like any camera, you have to look at, like, is it a camera that's fully has all the stuff you need to grab it, get it out of the box, and just start shooting with it, or is it the situation where you're going to have to buy a bunch of stuff to make it work? I remember when the Pocket 4K came out, a lot of people were saying, oh, well, the real price of the Pocket 4K is like $6,000 because you have to buy all these things. And I'm like, no, actually, because when you get the Pocket 4K, you can take it out of the box, assuming you've got a charged camera, you can put the battery into the camera, you can put a lens on the front and start shooting. Okay. You can see what you're doing in the monitor. It's not the brightest monitor in the world, but you can see what it is. You can use it to do your controls, all that stuff, right? So really, you don't need all that stuff. You can just put the camera on a thing and it goes. So there's a difference though with the Red Komodo, because from my understanding, it doesn't have a display. And not only that, but I think that the data rate alone is going to really hurt you on the storage. Like the storage on, let me just give you an example. This ProGrade card, it's less than $100. I think I got a 2-pack for like 80 of these V60s, and you can shoot 5.1 in 24 FPS, and you can shoot 8.1 in 60p, and it works fine. These are V60 cards, and you can get V90s, are a little bit more expensive. But the red compression does not seem to be as high, meaning the amount of compression doesn't seem to be as high on Red Code as on Blackmagic Raw. But it could just be the footage that I've seen, because I tried to download some test footage. The footage was only like a minute and a half long, and it was like 25 gigs. So dude, I was not going to download that whole thing. 25 gigs for 90 seconds, and it was just a guy talking. Like, I could have just taken maybe 5 seconds of that footage, and that would have been enough for me to see if the footage was any good. So I didn't even pull it into post, because it was too, like, the sample was too big. So and then with the cost of something like the Red Komodo, the other thing about it is that Red is very much like it's kind of like, I think it's Polar Pro that does the same thing, where they have their own little ecosystem, and you kind of need to have Red products for it to work, right? Like, you need to get those things. And so because of all this, I don't actually see the Red Komodo as much of a competitor to something like the Pocket 6K, which would be the closest thing out of the Blackmagic design cameras to consider as even any kind of competition. As far as Blackmagic design goes, there's some, DSLRs or whatever, I don't think they're not providing internal RAW. So, Panasonic S1, whatever, they have, like, I think they're trying to get ProRes RAW, but it's not really working yet, to my knowledge. And there's some other cameras that are trying to get like ProRes RAW, but that's all external. Like, if you're, where is it? Wherever it is, my HDMI cable's around here. If you're on a set and you're having to record your principal footage stuff to, like, through an HDMI cable, that's not really good. And especially if you're using like the camera as a crash cam, having stuff sticking out like that's probably not a great idea, because that thing could come loose. Even if you've got the locks, the way that HDMI is constructed is not really for that kind of stuff. So the Red Komodo not having the HDMI and then having the SDI instead, that's a pretty significant thing, and it tells you what kind of market they're going for. I think they're going for market of people who already are bought into Red. They have all the other stuff that you would, use as components for this thing, and they're going to use it for special purposes. If you watch, what was it called? The Movies That Made Us, which is a documentary series. They have the Toys That Made Us, and then they did a Movies That Made Us. When they talk about Home Alone, and in Home Alone, they had two cameras basically. They had like their principal camera, and then they had like another smaller ARRI camera that they would use for like coverage shots. Shots like where they would put it in this weird awkward situation where a smaller camera could fit and get these creative angles. And they ended up using a whole lot of those shots throughout the movie that they didn't think they were going to use. So to me, when I'm seeing something like the Red Komodo, it looks like it is more built to be used as a specialty camera for those other things. I don't think that their market is really going to be going after people who bought like the pocket cameras at all. Considering that the pocket cameras are definitely more friendly to people who are newer to video production or need something that's a little bit more adjustable to a variety of different kinds of purposes, seems like it would be for, a completely different thing. So that's what I think about that. And what's really interesting is seeing how people are already doing the fanboy talks. They're already going like, you'll see some footage from the Red Komodo, and people will be saying, "Oh my God, this footage looks absolutely amazing." And I'm like, I don't get it, because it looks like similar footage, which isn't bad, by the way, but it looks similar. It looks similar in the look of the footage to properly color corrected and color graded Pocket 6K footage. It looks similar. I would not be able to tell which camera between, the Pocket 6K or the between like the Pocket 6K or the Red Komodo. I would probably not be able to tell which one shot what. Okay. If you're looking at something like the Red Komodo and you're saying, well, I want to get this amazing color science, or I want to get this incredible image quality that the $4,000 extra is going to afford me for the Red Komodo, the footage I've seen does not say that. Okay. And even having something like the global shutter, which is a good thing, by the way, it's a good thing to have that global shutter. But a lot of people are not going to need that. The global shutter is going to be more useful in situations where, if you're using it in the car, if you're using like, the Pocket 4K or 6K or any other camera with rolling shutter in a car situation, and you got it handheld or whatever, and it's kind of jittery and moving around a lot, that's a situation where global shutter definitely would help, because the motion won't look so bad. Like whenever you've got more jitter or you've got things moving faster, you're going to get that artifacting that's going to come from the rolling shutter. If you have lights that are flashing, on and off with a rolling shutter camera, it's going to have artifacts. Whereas with a global shutter camera, it's not going to have those same artifacts. So in those cases, it makes a lot of sense to go with the red, because that global shutter in those situations are going to be very, very helpful compared to other cameras. But the reality is that a lot of us that are, using something like these Pocket 4K, 6K cameras, as far as that market, like you're not, for the vast majority of what you'd be doing, you're not going to need that. You won't need a global shutter. It would be nice to have it, but you're not going to need it. Having the SDI jack instead of an HDMI, a lot of people have HDMI monitors, so they want to, use the HDMI output to do a number of things with it. You can do another external recording or whatever. People with the Pocket 4K or 6K are using the external SSDs to record their footage. So it's kind of, the pocket cameras are a bit more accessible in that way. The Red's not going to be like that, from my understanding. It's not going to have those kinds of features. So, what I'm trying to say is that if you're trying to figure out, am I going to go for like a Red Komodo or a pocket camera, you really need to, I think, not look at the images. You need to look at what the specifications are for what you can actually input with the camera and the outputs you can get with the camera. Whether or not you like red code versus BRAW, you should, make that decision. And I think whether or not you're going to need a global shutter or not. I mean, that seems to be a pretty significant thing, not the image quality. The image quality looks at best or at worst like I can't see a difference. I just can't. I can't see a difference. That doesn't give Blackmagic Design a nod, and it doesn't give Komodo, the red Komodo, a nod. It just looks like a tie from what I've seen. What I have noticed though is that this time around, I think that when the Pocket 4K went around first, and they were kind of like giving it to people to test, I think there was a lot of people kind of just throwing the manufacturer LUT from Blackmagic Design onto the footage. My opinion is that LUT sucks. Okay, I think it sucks because everything looks yellow brown with it. Like the yellows, like if you look at the vector scope, when you put the Blackmagic Design Rec. 709 LUT on the footage, the yellows get hammered. The greens and yellow start to get hammered into yellow, and you don't really get much greens out of it. So if Blackmagic Design made a proper correction LUT that made the greens green, you know, it like actually made the greens where they were supposed to go, push the colors right, where it was basically just more of a correction lookup table instead of a style kind of thing, which I think maybe is what they were doing, then the footage that first came out for the Pocket 4K maybe would have looked better. And I think that the red LUTs are better on the red cameras and their footage compared to the Blackmagic Design ones. I think that's one of the significant differences between the test footages that I've seen from either one. So another thing is that I'm really kind of disappointed in the kinds of test footage that I've seen from the Red Komodo, because it doesn't look like they're really pushing what it can do, but it might just be because it's early and they don't really want that. So, you know, that's my feelings on it. That's my feeling on that Red Komodo. I'm not going to be getting it because I don't need something like that. If I'm going to be getting another camera, if I'm worried about it having like global shutter or whatever, dude, honestly, like that the Canon what was it, C300 Mark III, that one with the dual gain output, that one looks like what I would probably get for another camera. I mean, it's like, I think 10,000, but when you add up, likely if you add up all the other stuff, likely if you add up all the other things that you would, you know, put in with that $6,000 Red Komodo, likely it's going to end up being, you know, more than that anyway. So, yeah, I just don't, you know, Komodo doesn't seem like something I would get. But again, I don't think it's for me. I don't think it's for what I do, which is totally fine. So that's my thoughts on that. When we get more information about it, when we get more, oh yeah, I forgot to mention this. There's no XLR inputs on the Komodo either, but on the Pocket cameras there are. So that's something also to think about. Like, you know, that's why I think they are designing that camera with a very specific kind of consumer in mind, not the same market as the Pocket cameras. That's what I think about it. So once we get more information about this Pocket 6K, you know, we'll be able to make more of a decision. But I'm not seeing anything IQ wise that would make me go, wow, that's amazing. But you know, for Red, you got to look at the price of that, $6,000, but the next closest one is like 12,000. So it's better for Red, but not something that I would consider. All right, let's check the chat. Question: any recommendations on where to hang out on the internet to learn more about this technical stuff besides your channel? In terms of codecs, color spaces, etc. Total novice here. Yeah, so cheap ass reviews. Lift Gamma Gain is good. If you want to learn more, there's Cambridge in Color. As far as forums, Blackmagic Design, if you're interested in Resolve, go to the Blackmagic Design forums and go to the DaVinci Resolve page and learn more there. There's some really good information there. If you go to the cinematography forums, there's a lot of there's there's a lot of really annoying things that happen in the cinematography section of that forum, but the DaVinci Resolve one tends to be a lot more, I'm going to say, nice and friendly and more specific to what people are actually trying to solve. That is just my thing about it. But yeah, that's a really good place to go. Creative Cow, I used a long time ago. They might still have some good stuff. I'm just trying to think. Yeah, and for Resolve, if you're trying to learn stuff with Resolve, the manual's really good. But yeah, or my channel's good too. So Last Vampire on Earth is a GD masterpiece of filmmaking. It's definitely a film. It's a film. Yeah, VFX Todd, totally. If you're a VFX guy, you're gonna love it. It's gonna be great. Stick through the whole thing. Watch it with friends. Have a beer or whatever your favorite alcohol is, or whatever it is you do to relax. Okay. Hi, Alice. How are you? Hope Stash Mountain Bike. Which LUT are you currently using on the BMP CC4K? I don't use LUTs. If you're talking about a reference LUT, I generate my own reference LUTs based on the transforms that I do in Resolve, and then I output a LUT based on those settings. So, for example, the one I'm using right now, I've been using it for a while, is a Red IPP2 LUT that I created where I use color space transform nodes and stuff. So that's what I do. And you can find the Red IPP2 LUTs. Let me find it real quick so I can post it. Let's see here. Let me find it real quick. Here we go. Yeah, so I use these. I don't use them. I don't use the LUTs for my color grades. I use the color management workflow options in Resolve, where it basically maps everything to Red IPP2. And I like the way that it gives you like a pretty much out of the box kind of transform. You can use the LUTs also if you want in your workflow, but what you need to do is use a color space transform node, transform from, and if you want to make a LUT that you can put into your camera, make sure that in the raw tab or whatever, that you have it set to Blackmagic Design film and like film and the color space, because it's supposed to transform from that. And then you use a color space transform node to go from BMD film and the film gamma and the color space to red wide gamut RGB and red log 3 G10. Okay. And then on the last node, you put in the red IPP2 map, whichever one you want. And in the middle, you do whatever corrections you want. Okay. Whatever the look is that you want to do. And then you do the, you make the clips visible, right click it, output a LUT, and then that's what I do. I don't use other people's LUTs or whatever. Basically, all I'm doing is a Rec 709 transform, and then I have like a highlight roll off, which is what the Red IPP2 map is really doing for me. So that's how I do my grades. And it works really, really well for me. I can get a really good look. Even with poorly shot material, I can get a decent look pretty quickly. Yeah, so that's what I do. The on the LUT situation, my best advice that I can possibly give you on LUTs is to learn how to generate your own looks and your own lookup tables so that you can get your own kind of look and your own thing going. So you can be a little bit more unique with the way that you make your footage. Unless you don't care about that. If you don't care about that, then just buy a LUT from somebody. I hear that the buttery LUTs are nice, but I don't I don't need them. Recommend, yeah. See, the problem in my opinion with the buttery natural Rec 709 LUT is that if you needed to output to something different for whatever reason, you don't have a LUT for that. You don't have a Rec 2020 version, do you? You don't have like an HDR version. You don't have a number of different versions. So that's why I don't like relying on that stuff. Obviously, if you're not making anything that is ever going to be transformed into those different kinds of gammas or color spaces or whatever, it won't matter. But especially if you're doing something in like CG and you need to send like a linear kind of output to your CG people, you're not going to have a LUT for that. So, that's why I don't do it with those kind of LUTs that you just buy online. But I think most people who are buying those don't need to do what I'm talking about anyway. So, yeah. The Juan Malera Alexa P4K power grade. If you want to give these guys money. Yeah, the power grade, I'm interested in seeing that power grade. It looked really good. It looked really good. So I was actually very impressed with his side-by-side of that. But that's the kind of thing that you can do if you learn how to use the tools. He's not doing anything in that I would say that other people can't do if you understand how to use the tools. I don't have an ARRI camera, so it's harder for me to make something like that. If I had an ARRI camera and I had basically the stuff to do it, I would probably want to do my own kind of power grade with it too. But I just don't have access to that, and I'm not going to pay for it. Another great one on Amazon was The Terror. First season was great. The Terror, I'm gonna have to look at that. It's so simple. You are same nearly. I'm not sure what you mean. Emotion VFX. So simple. You are same. I'm not sure what that means. I only use LUTs just to look at footage with the colors balanced. For output, I do my own grading. Yeah, that's the right way to do it, Todd. Because and I have seen where people start talking about wanting to bake in looks that are that make it where like a colorist or the director or somebody else can't ruin their footage. Which is a mistake in my opinion. But like, I think having LUTs as like your references are great. I think that if you're doing narratives, you're going to want to make your own look anyway. So you're going to want to output your own LUTs for the different scenes, whatever tone you're going for each different scene. But usually those LUTs, other than maybe like how they do their highlight clipping or how they do the toe or certain things with the luminance mapping, the colors though can be wacky and all over the place. And that's why I can't really trust them. And when you throw the LUT on there, if it's not just shaping your luminance values and it's doing all these other things with your color, you're going to have to counterbalance all that. I don't like doing that. If I'm doing a straight Rec 709 conversion, right? If I'm just converting it to a different color space, it's going to take whatever those values are that's fed from the camera and transform it. So the results are always going to be pretty predictable. It's not going to, if a LUT is designed with 5600 Kelvin versus 3200 Kelvin in mind, the colors are going to look wrong because it's not designed for what you're shooting. And even if you get the white balance nailed, depending on the camera and depending on what kind of codec you shot, the color values when you go in to do your white balance corrections and all that kind of stuff in post might be tweaked differently, and you're going to have to pull your color values regardless. So that's just my thing on that. And with the Red Eye PP2, for me, it just makes it easier. Like, I don't have to do the roll off mapping because Soft and Very Soft do a really, really good job of kind of getting your luminance values mapped in a way that makes sense. So that's why I haven't really felt like I need to go farther. I mean, if I need to, take something and use like a transformed Rec 709 and manually do it, I could do that. It just kind of takes that step out for me. And a lot of LUTs do that. The only thing is that, again, usually with a LUT, they're going to try to correct colors, which might not be correct to you. So especially if they're using different lenses. Like I was seeing one, I think it's the Buttery LUTs guy, like he uses a lot of vintage glass. If he's using vintage glass and he's using that for his LUT creations, the way that glass is tinting the image is going to be different than using a number of different pieces of glass. So that's the other thing too. It's not going to look right all the time. It's going to give a style. It might not look exactly right though. It's going to depend on what you put in front of the sensor. So basically, Juan's grade isn't different from your way, but sadly, pretty limited at first. I was just in because it's good to learn and build on that. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like, I've noticed sometimes with the transforms, like one power grade that I do will work really, really well for one shot, and then another one, it won't look that great. So, yeah. Yeah, all my vintage glass is tinted, some magenta, some yellow. Yep. Yeah, that'll happen. The Canon glass that I had before tinted everything magenta. In most cases, you would get sunburns on skin tones, which didn't look right. All right, so second segment. I guess this is kind of like a product review, but I can't speak to how long it's going to last or anything. But I used this thing for a couple shoots now. I did like a bunch of tests, and then I tried to quickly like set it up in a bunch of different situations that were rough terrain. It didn't really work out that well, but yeah. So I used the Edelkrone Slider 1 version 2. It was on sale for like, I think $150 off. And I had my eye on it for a while because I've had several sliders and I've never, like when I was doing dolly pushing and stuff, like pushing a dolly, you can get it really nice. Like if you have a good smooth track, it's really easy. But I always had trouble with sliders. Always had trouble with sliders. Even more expensive sliders, they'd get rough after a while. You know, you use it for several shoots. Somebody, you know, screwed up and banged it a little bit, putting it away, and it's, you know, a little bit rougher than it used to be. And the other thing is that I need something that's smaller, lighter weight, easier to store, and I can put on a singular tripod. So I was looking at that slider, the Edelkrone slider, because number one, it's robotic, which means that I'm not going to have my hands on it moving it, which I don't trust my hands to do stuff like that. I'm just not that great at it. You know, I don't have the touch. So the robotic thing was what I was thinking about. And then the other thing was that it's about a foot of track that's actually usable, and that's about how much I would get as useful on any of the other sliders I'd had, because even if it was longer, I'd have to use 2 tripods, and even then sometimes it would sway or bow. Oops, sorry, I touched the mic. It would sway or bow in the middle. So I was looking at, like, there was, I forget the name of it. It was called a sway. It was like the Edelkrone wing. Like if you've ever seen the wing, it's like a thing that folds up and you can put it in your hand and then you unfold it and you can kind of get these little movements with it. But all the test footage that I saw, it was not that rock solid. And then the other problem was that it did still have kind of that sway or bowing in the footage. So I was like, okay, probably not that one. But I kept seeing that Edelkrone slider and being able to do the robotic stuff and being able to repeat the same movement over and over and over again was what I was looking for, because that way I can work with, if I'm by myself, right, which is usually the kind of stuff that I would do, I can work with my talent. I can work with my talent and get them to, you know, do whatever the action is and time it out each time. So I don't have to have my hands on the slider. I can just be looking at my monitor and tell them when to go. And that was very useful. So, and the application is actually really easy to use. You need to make sure if you're going to get one, you got to update it to the newest firmware for both the slider and for the camera application. You have to make sure to reset all your stuff, including turning on and off your phone. But once you get it to hook in to your slider, dude, it's pretty cool. Like, you can set up to 3 different points for it to go to, and you can set a curve, like an ease in, ease out curve, and you can make it pretty straight where it just kind of goes the full length at the same speed, or you can have it with a super like shallow curve where it just kind of eases in, and then it just eases out. And it actually can move pretty quickly. I was watching some footage of it online. I was watching some footage of it online, and the footage didn't look like it had that quick of a speed, but I shot in the 60p because I wanted slow motion of this stuff. I was shooting in 60p, and at the full speed, it's pretty good. Like, it's the exact amount of speed that I want for doing the slow motion stuff. And you can change the speed from 0 to 100% on it. So I was actually really impressed. And I was able to get like top down views, and I was able to get, I was using 2 different tripod heads, one tripod head on the tripod, and then my other tripod head on the slider to kind of get the different angles. So I was actually really impressed in it. I wouldn't say that if it wasn't, and I had to actually pay for it. Nobody pays me for this. It's pretty good. I don't think everybody's going to need something like that. Like, if you have more people, it's probably better to get a manual slider because you can do more. You can do like bigger moves with it. But especially if you're by yourself, it's a really handy thing to have. Oh yeah, and another thing about it. So it's in the closet. But what I was able to do, I took my hi-hat, I put it on the table, okay? And I was trying to get a particular angle, and I couldn't quite get my camera in this like hole. You gotta understand that when you're shooting in a lab, they have these workbenches that have like all these shelves and stuff. So you have maybe this much room to put something. And I couldn't move my tripod any further to get the angle I wanted. But with the slider, I just brought it all the way to the left, and then I could angle the camera to get the shot I wanted. So that was pretty cool. I was very impressed. I was very impressed with it. The poor use of it would be doing some really big shots, like big exteriors where there's not much layering in the shot, because you're not really going to get the effect. But if you place, things pretty close to the lens, that will exaggerate the movement. So even just a foot of movement will give you a pretty exaggerated look to the movement. And a lot of times those more subtle moves make more sense in the kind of videos that I do. Big, bold moves are not really what we're looking for with the kind of stuff that I'm doing. So yeah, very impressed. Very impressed. Technology is pretty amazing sometimes. And it has I think it's a 20 pound, it can sustain 20 pounds horizontal, and then vertical it can do, I think it was 5 pounds, but I'm not going to use it vertical anyway. I don't really think I would need a shot that was vertical like that. So yeah, pretty cool. The big thing about it though that I wanted to say, make sure that when you use it, you're putting you're making sure that you're stabilizing everything, because I was looking at some reviews and somebody complained that they didn't like the Edelkrone slider because they had to use a stand. or they had to use a tripod. And I was like, okay, the thing is a rectangle. You're putting a camera on it, which is going to have a lens, which, I mean, if you're not stabilizing a slider and you're putting a camera on it, and especially if the slider is not super wide, it's made to be compact. Why are you expecting it to just sit there on a table and not have your camera fall over? That's weird to me. Like, you can at least, I don't know, use tape or something to keep it down. I don't know. But that I thought was weird. It was a weird review. But definitely make sure, it doesn't matter if you're using a lighter camera with a lighter lens or a larger camera with a longer lens. I had the Sigma 18-35 on there, and you definitely want to make sure it's stabilized on it. But I mean, I was able to get, straight down types of shots. I was able to get, completely horizontal shots. I could get shots where I was angled up. And if you put a pan bar on, you can actually just like hold the pan bar and have the hit the slider to just start moving. And then as it moves, it will just pan, your camera will just pan the shot over like you need to. It's great. I was very surprised how good it was. I had a great time with it. So, and the subject, the woman I was doing this thing for, my wife actually, she was really happy with the shots too. She was really surprised. So, good stuff. Sliders, good stuff. Okay. What are my other notes? Okay. Get a drink. Let's see here. See you, DJ. Let's see. You only use lots of good footage. Yeah, I saw that. Basically, one's greatest and different from your way. Limited. Gotta head out. See you, DJ. Bye, DJ. Yeah. Next phase, gear reviews. I don't know. I don't know. If I want to make more money on this channel, I'd probably do that, because gear reviews always get more hits than things that actually are more important, in my opinion. But familiar issues with sliders. Yep. Sliders can be a real pain in the butt. Like, I remember when the slider thing was really just starting happening. This was back when we were using the Canon 5D Mark II for stuff, and we could never get a stable shot. It just wouldn't happen. Like, it would just be rocky and it just wouldn't work right. So it was actually smoother if you just what we would do is put on a roller cart, and then have somebody on an office chair and just put the camera on the roller cart, and that was smoother than using a slider. So, most sliders suck. And you know what I found out is most reviewers really suck, because I've spent good money on some pretty crappy, I've spent some good money on some pretty crappy sliders that got excellent reviews. Like, oh, this slider is so great. It's only like $200 and it's smooth as butter. And then I go use it and it's not smooth as butter at all. It's awful. So, I don't trust reviewers much anymore. Hupstash Mountain Bike says, back to the red LUT, output color space, red wide gamut RGB, and output gamma red log 3G10. Is that right? So what I'm talking about is that for your color space transform node, you basically have where you need to transform, because all the red LUTs are made for their gamma and color space. So what you need to do is you need to transform your footage into the proper color space for the LUTs to work. So you need to use a color space transform node. On the input, color space, and gamma, whatever your camera is, you put that input. And then on the output, you use red wide gamut RGB for the color space, output gamma's red log 3G10, and then you make a serial node and you throw the LUT down after your color space transform. That should give you a proper look from the LUT. And you're gonna have to do adjustments with your exposure most likely, because sometimes, like if a camera usually has where the exposure, the data is spat out higher or lower, it might, make your footage first transform look a little weird. But if you do an exposure adjustment and whatever color adjustments you need, you save that out, that should work. No problem, man. Alrighty. All right, so I got a request a while ago to do some videos on Fujilog, and I was hoping they'd be here. Pascal sent me some stuff, and I made a video about it. I made a video about the way that I would probably do the transform, which is basically using the same way that I do really anything, which is using Red-Eye PP2. So if you haven't seen that video and you're using Fuji cameras, definitely check that out, because you could save some money by just using transforms. You need to make sure, though, that you're using DaVinci Resolve 16, because if you do not use 16, you're not going to have access to the Fujilog Gamma for your transforms. They added that in 16. So I had one subscriber that was having difficulty. He's not, I don't think he's here right now either. He was having some difficulty because he had DaVinci Resolve 15. So make sure you're updating to 16. And what I think is the problem with anybody shooting with the Fuji cameras is that I don't think they're really taken that seriously as a filmmaking tool yet. So, maybe now they are. So DaVinci Resolve added the Fujilog Gamma in there, and the color space will be selectable now in your RCM, the Resolve color management, and it will be selectable in the color space transforms. And if you do what I'm showing in my video with your footage, I really don't think you're going to need LUTs, because the Fujilog looks really good with just a straight, even just like a Rec 709 conversion. It looks pretty good. I mean, I was really surprised. That footage that I got was it was recorded with an Atomos Ninja of some kind, and it was in ProRes HQ, I believe. But still, the color did not look wrong. And the problem that people were having, if you haven't seen the video, is that Fujilog is not in Rec 709. Okay, it's not in Rec 709, and Fujilog is not one of those color spaces where if you have just a regular sRGB monitor, where the colors are going to look correct at all when you start grading it. It's going to be really weird. And if you're not used to it and you don't know what you need to do to get Rec 2020 to manually be transformed into Rec 709 or whatever it is you're trying to do, DCI, P3, whatever, if you don't know how to do that, it's going to be a real pain, and you're going to rely on the LUTs. The annoying thing is that Fuji only provided an Eterna LUT, as far as I know, for their manufacturer Rec 709 kind of transform, which is putting like a look to it. If you wanted to just do a regular transform, it doesn't look like it's going to do that. So, and then, people are selling their LUTs, which is normal. I mean, there's a need. People needed to transform their footage to Rec 709. So, people are doing these LUTs and selling them. But again, I think that the problem is just people not knowing that it needed to go from Rec 2020 to Rec 709. Even if you didn't have the Fujilog Gamma available to you in DaVinci Resolve 15, you could still use a color space transform node and go from your input color space, you choose Rec 2020 and you output to Rec 709, and the colors will look right. and it won't cost you any additional money. Okay, it won't cost you anything more to do that. And I just like, I feel bad because I mean, there was a comment even where someone said, I stopped using my Fuji for video because they couldn't grade it. That sucks. That sucks. And it's what's really annoying is that when people are having these problems, there's like, it's almost like a weird echo chamber where someone says, "Oh, it's the color science. Like the color science out of Fuji cameras are just bad." They're not. They're just not being transformed right. That's a problem. I don't even want to call it a user error. It's just you might not know what you're supposed to do to get it to look right. Okay? So, even if you're not using DaVinci Resolve 15 to make your colors look right, use a transform node, go from Rec 2020 to Rec 709, and your colors will look more correct and easier to grade than they were in the past. So, just this is where, in my opinion, knowledge and like attaining more and more knowledge about this stuff is really important, because you're going to be, as an artist, you're going to be hampered by your knowledge more than you are by the gear you've got. And this Fuji situation is showing, I think, again, that there's still this problem that we're having in the community where there's assumptions made that something is a camera's fault when it's not. It's like most likely not the camera's fault. It's just you don't know a trick, or you're not doing a specific thing that you need to do. And maybe the manufacturer just doesn't know that people want to just like grade their footage whatever way they want. Usually maybe they were expecting people to just throw their Eternal LUT on and that was going to be it. They didn't expect people to maybe want to grade it manually. So, I don't know who would be to blame for that, but it's a little frustrating when I see like people continuously saying that it's like, it's the color science's fault. And I go, probably not. It's probably not. And that was the case, with my experience so far with Fujilog. So the reason I'm talking about this is that there's evidently where there's a whole discussion being made where the Fuji XT, I think it's the T3 and the T4, evidently both have a problem with shooting at like 3200 Kelvin. Now, and they're saying that the colors are wrong and it can't be fixed and it's a bug in the software or it's bad color science or something like that. So because they were saying the same thing about that with, where it's just not, I have a feeling where it's just a problem with the users not knowing what they're supposed to do with the file. So if you guys have Fuji cameras, okay, I would really, really appreciate it if you would send me some footage, because I don't have an X-T3 or an X-T4. If you could provide me with some footage where it's shot with like a color checker, white cards, all those things, and skin tones, one at 3200 Kelvin, like white balance it for 3200 Kelvin and make sure you're using the right lights, 3200 Kelvin balanced lights. Tell me what lights you're using, this stuff, so I can know. And then also daylight balanced. If someone could do that for me, that would be awesome, because I would really like to experiment with it and see what's going on. And the reason why I think my hunch is right about this is because I took a low quality JPEG, because the person that was complaining would not provide the actual footage and would not provide a white card and would not provide a color checker or anything that would help anyone. All they had was like a person sitting in the middle of the room. If you can, when I took that low quality JPEG and I just transformed from Rec 2020 to Rec 709, the colors looked more correct, but there was artifacts because low quality image. So I'm pretty sure I'm right about this. I just need to have the proper test footage so I can check it. Okay. So if you guys could do that, that would be great. And I think that it would help people, because now like people are just going, oh, well, I can't use tungsten lights with my camera. And I don't think so. Fujifilm was doing like movie film for forever. You think they're not going to be able to white balance 3200 Kelvin footage right? I don't think so. Like, it just doesn't add up to me. Someone please send me that stuff. Okay. And that will allow me to segue into this. Generally speaking, on certain cameras, digital cameras, when the sensors are made, they're calibrated more for like one color temperature than another. Some people don't know this, but if you use the Blackmagic Pocket 4K, for example, if you shoot at say 5000 or 5500 Kelvin versus 3200 Kelvin, certain colors are going to look worse at 3200 than they are at 5000. Blues especially start to look weird. Sometimes they are more likely to clip. And a lot of times the reason why that might be happening is because the sensor is more calibrated, or it will perform better at daylight than it does at the tungsten balance. It's just the way that the sensor is designed. I've never seen one that can record in a 10-bit log, a proper log, like let's say ProRes codec, where it looked as bad as some of the stuff I was seeing, or as off as some of the things that I was seeing from certain users, which again leads me to believe that they're just not transforming the footage right. Okay, so yeah, that's another thing also about the sensors and their calibration, and which white balance tends to work better with those cameras. Like, if you're going to shoot a movie, or if you're going to shoot video of something, you need to test it for whatever circumstances you're going to be in. Okay. If let's say there was a problem with the Fuji X-T3 or X-T4, and you went and you got a set of ARRI tungsten lights, not knowing that there was a problem, assuming that there is a problem, and you didn't test it first with the lens and the camera and all those things, and you go out and shoot and you find out that all the footage is unusable, that's not on the camera, that's on you. Okay? It's on you, because it's your responsibility as the cinematographer or DP, or one person army, or whatever it is you're doing with the camera. It's your responsibility to make sure that the gear you use works properly with whatever it is that you're going to be using. Okay. Any DP that knows what they're doing is going to be doing a huge amount of tests. They'll spend days doing tests with different fabrics, the costuming, with different filters, with different lights, different lenses, all of those things, to make sure that whatever they're shooting, and whatever circumstance they're going to be in for those shoots, it will all be predictable. They'll know exactly how the camera is going to respond if they do a certain thing with the camera. Okay, so that's another thing that I believe we need to do in this community, is take a bit more responsibility for our things we need to do. Okay, like if you find yourself blaming your equipment, it's most likely not the equipment's fault. You needed to check that stuff ahead of time. Okay, I'm not defending pieces of equipment. I'm just trying to tell you that as an artist, you need to take control of all that. Okay, if the camera that you're going to use isn't going to work because the rolling shutter is terrible for a car ride situation, don't just like use the camera and then complain about it later. Rent a camera that will work properly for that, one with a global shutter, one that doesn't have a horrible rolling shutter problem, or get a stable, like a better way to shoot it, and do that. Okay. If the lens you're using is, not getting the kind of look that you want, then do some tests, figure out which lens is going to work for whatever the shoot it is you're doing, and whatever filters you might want to use. Do that all ahead of time, because once you get on the shoot and you're there sitting, in post-production complaining, it's already too late. It's already too late at that point. So important stuff to think about. Very, very important. Yeah, and then I want to say this also with log profiles. There's Fujilog has it. I think Sony has their like slog whatever number that's supposed to be for like 8-bit recordings. There's a Canon, I think it's log 3 or whatever. Don't shoot log in 8-bit, okay? So I know it might be unpopular to say that, but my opinion is that if you're shooting 8-bit footage, you need to get it as close as possible to the final result that you can. And if you're shooting log, it's not going to be even close to the final result. And the things that start to suffer the most in log when you're shooting 8-bit is the colors. 8-bit color in log is not going to give you much room to do much because there's just not enough information in there in the colors. Okay, it's just not there. And there are, for certain cameras, really, really good color profiles that work pretty well for 8-bit. I haven't done a lot with HLG, the hybrid log gamma stuff, but I've seen some really, really good results with that compared to doing log in 8-bit. So that would be something to experiment with if you have that. If you have an HLG setting, you might want to experiment with that and see if that gives you better results. For Canon, if you're shooting Canon, the wide DR is, my opinion, the best 8-bit profile they have, because it will give you a huge amount of dynamic range. It's calibrated for like the dynamic range of the camera, and it gets you as much dynamic range as it can without sacrificing too much of the color data. And it usually does not push the shadows up too high, which is one of the problems with shooting log and 8-bit anyways. The shadows look like crap anyway, so you got to crash them down. So wide DR for Canon is good. For Fuji, Eterna. Eterna is a really good color profile. I think it's just about as good as Canon's wide DR. Very, very good color profile. So I don't think Sony has one like that. It's been a while since I've shot Sony. I was shooting with the PXWs a long time ago, but it's been a while since I've used Sony. But yeah, if you're shooting with those cameras, and you're doing 8-bit, stick to those, wider dynamic range, but not super, super wide log profiles. And I think you'll have better results. Again, I know it's unpopular for me to say that. And I know that I'll probably get people telling me, well, I shoot 8-bit slog and it's great and all those things. But, sometimes you don't know what you don't know. If you haven't seen what it looks like when it's actually correct, and you haven't seen what happens when you need to do even a little bit of correction with 8-bit log and see how the colors fall apart, dude, it's not fun. Okay. All right. So another thing, I'm working on a video also for Fuji where I'll show you how to get into ACES. So just to recap a bit on ACES, ACES is really, really useful, in my opinion, for actually taking so just to tell you, what I do a lot is I have to take stock images from Getty or a place like that, and then I have to use them in videos. And one of the problems is that on Getty, the color palettes and the looks and how exposed shots and all that, it's not really standard. It's not standardized, and a lot of times they blowout highlights, and they do all kinds of things that I just don't like. Sometimes the saturation is just way too high, whatever. So ACES has a really good way of transforming Rec. 709 into its CCT color space for me to use LMTs to get it to look like what I want. And especially when you're doing, like, in my opinion, when I'm doing stuff like black balancing and trying to just like warm up the sky or the highlights or whatever, dude, it's like, it makes it really easy to work in. And I actually get really good, easy looks out of grading in the ACES Rec. 709 to CCT, and then from CCT to Rec. 709 again, and doing grading in between, dude, it works really well. So anyway, the reason why I say that is because there's a lot of people who kind of want to take their Fuji files and work in ACES. With DaVinci 16, you can. The kind of the irons on ACES, in my opinion, and that's holding it back, is that manufacturers need to have input device transforms in order for it to work correctly. Now, that has to come from a manufacturer. If a manufacturer is not really caring about ACES, which it seems like Blackmagic Design doesn't, because we still don't have a Pocket 4K or 6K IDT. Pocket 4K has been out for a while, and the regular film one does not work properly for their ProRes. And then also, I actually don't use ACES with the Pocket 4K anymore because there were artifacts from reds and magentas that I could not recover. Like, they would be perfectly fine if I used any other method. If I just used a regular Rec. 709 transform, those artifacts wouldn't be there. But if I did an ACES transform, didn't matter how I did it, I'd have artifacts that I could not get rid of. Okay, so that's just a quick recap with me in the ACES thing. But with Fuji, I don't think you're going to have those color gamut problems that we see with the Pocket 4K, because Fujilog is in Rec. 2020, which is not as wide as like a red wide gamut RGB. It's not as wide as the Blackmagic Design Color Science 4. The Color Science 4 is like, I think that there's something weird that they're doing. I think what they're doing is they're trying to make it like as wide of a gamut as they possibly can, and as wide of a gamma as they possibly can. But when it comes to conforming it to color spaces and gammas that make sense, it's like the math is just being weird with ACES, especially. Like, some of them work fine, and then ACES is just like weird. So yeah, anyway. So I don't think you're going to have those problems with Fujilog, is what I'm trying to say, because Rec. 2020 is a lot smaller than the Color Science V4 out of Blackmagic Design. So it's very simple. I'll tell you how to do it here, and then you can. I see Mr. Subjective here. So if you have DaVinci Resolve 16, you can do this yourself. You can take a color space transform node, okay? Make the input color space Rec. 2020, output color space, or I'm sorry, input color space Rec. 2020, input gamma Fujifilm F-Log. Then for the output color space, you pick red wide gamut RGB, and then the gamut you make it red log 3G10. Okay, then you make 2 serial nodes after that. Take an ACES transform, put it into the second one, and then in the third one you put in another ACES transform. Okay, in the second node, so you got 3 total nodes. You got your color space transform. Okay, then you have an ACES transform. We'll call that the input transform. And then the third one's going to be the output transform. In the input transform, for the input device, you're going to choose red wide gamut log 3G10. The out, you're going to pick ACES CCT. And then in your third node, you're going to make the input ACES CCT and the output Rec. 709. If you do that, you will have taken your Fuji footage and put it into Aces, and it works. I tried it. Works perfectly fine. Works just like the Blackmagic Design one. If you take the Pocket 4K or the 6K and you put it into Aces the exact same way, you do that with the Fuji Log, and you can put it into Aces and do whatever you want. So that's how you can do it. Okay, so I hope that helps if you're looking to do that. I know some people like working in Aces. I find it really helpful for certain situations, but not helpful for other situations. So yeah. Yeah, my thing is Aces with getting a bunch of stock footage to be conformed to the same look, great. Taking Pocket 4K footage and putting it into Aces to get stuff, unpredictable. Unpredictable. Not fun. Okay. Let's see here. Let's look in here in the stream. Yeah, I hope that helped. Help Stash Mountain Bike. I hope that helped you out. Yeah, once you know the color space and the gamma of your camera, you're free to do all kinds of things that you never thought you could do before. Honestly, makes it a lot easier to do things. Could be the problem is they're grading the footage in Premiere and not using a CST, or did they say they're using Resolve? Yeah, I don't know what the thing is that like the people who complain about this stuff, like complain about color science, or they complain about these things, like they're very generally they're very like secretive about all of the things that you need to know to help them. It's like, from my understanding, it seems almost like they're not really that interested in correcting the problem. They just want to complain about it. So it's really annoying because like I'm actually looking at it going, okay, how can I help this person? And I look at it and I'm like, okay, what lenses were you using? What were the white balance settings? Did you do any, like, the shot? This is what's so frustrating about it. Like the shot that the guy used, like there's no color checker. How could anyone know what was correct? Like, we don't know the proper complexion of the one person in the shot. We have no idea what their skin is supposed to look like. We don't know what their hair is supposed to look like. We don't know what the walls are supposed to look like. How do we know what color temperature the lights were? How do we know what it was for a fact? How do we know what the white balance was really on the camera? We don't know those things. You know, like, was there additional lights used? What was the ISO? What was the ISO that they chose? I mean, all of these things are important. And again, the lack of even a white card or a gray card in the image, it's like, how are we even supposed to know which one's correct? How would anyone ever know except for you? Which is probably the most frustrating thing about all this, is like, I actually look at that stuff and I go, oh, this person might need help. But at the end of the day, they might just be complaining just to complain. I mean, that's what it seems like. So I don't really get that kind of stuff. If you want help with something, like if you send me an email, right? If you send me an email and you say, here's my image, it looks wrong, like, please fix it. And you don't tell me anything, and you don't give me even a white point that I can use, how is anyone supposed to help you? I mean, that's what's a little annoying about all that stuff. So yeah. I don't know, dude. It's just a little annoying. And that's the other thing too. Like, they didn't say what program they were using. It's just like, oh, here's the images. And if they're not using a color space transform, if they're not if they're looking at it on an sRGB monitor, and one of them, like the Blackmagic Design colors, will always look initially different. it will always look initially different than how a Rec 2020 or an HLG recording looks. Like if you took a hybrid log gamma, you take an HLG image, right? Which is really, it's almost like, if you have a linear gamma, or if you have like these other color spaces that are more for metrics, or they're more for like just to store data, and you just looked at them and said, oh, look how bad this one is. Well, dude, you didn't even like display it properly. If you didn't even display it properly, how could you even know if it was correct? You couldn't. It would be impossible to know. That's what's so annoying about all this. So like, I hope I don't sound like an asshole about it. It's just like, I actually look at this and I want to help people. Like if I look at somebody having a problem, I go, hey, a good use of my time might be to help somebody out. But that's what we end up with. So I don't know. Did not know there was going to be a live stream. Yeah, Mr. Subjective, every Wednesday, 4:00. Every Wednesday, 4:00, my man. Let's see. People speaking German, I think. I wanted to go there this. I was wanting to go to a bunch of different places in Germany this year, and COVID happened. So that'll have to wait. Really want to visit. You think it's supposed to be on top of this? Yeah. Nice. Have you seen the movie Frost Nixon? It was shot on film. Great narrative, but the entire movie was darn too yellow, and there's something weird with the audio. Frost Nixon is one of those movies that I started watching and then I fell asleep. So I didn't finish it. But that's the thing about color grading, Mr. Subjective. The thing about color grading is that it really is the artist's decision to make it look how they want you to feel. I remember, what was it? I was a kid when I first learned this. In Event Horizon, they intentionally had the color palette to try to make the viewers feel sick the entire time. So when you think about that, it makes you wonder what the yellow was supposed to be. I know that in a lot of period pieces, like Frost Nixon is, they tend to do like a yellowing to it normally, which is weird. And I'm not 100% sure why they do that. What was the other movie that I saw where they were doing that? I mean, in The Crown, they tend to have it warmer, the older ones. What was it? Oh my God, was it an Aflac? There's a car insurance commercial where they do the same thing. Like it looks like the thing is supposed to take place in the 60s or the 70s. And it's like a dude getting into a car. I think it's supposed to be like one of those buddy cop kind of things. And it's supposed to take place, I believe, in the 70s, the commercial, and it's all yellow. Not sure why they always do that. So, and the thing is, like, if you watch, like, I get it if you're trying to make it look vintage, but if you watch movies that are shot from the time periods that they're talking about, like if it's in the 80s or the 70s or whatever, they don't look like that. So I don't have any idea why a period piece would do that. It's really weird. I'm not sure what that's supposed to convey. I've never got like, I think it's supposed to have that feeling like you're in some kind of like past event or whatever, but it always just looks like they're having a firestorm or something. It always looks kind of weird to me. I mean, I guess it works. I mean, if people like it, it just always looks a little weird to me. Something weird with the audio. I'm not sure what was weird with the audio with it, but yeah, that's one of those movies I fell asleep. I don't know if it's good or not. 2001 Space Odyssey is another one I've never gotten through. I tried maybe 5 times to get through 2001 Space Odyssey. Can't do it. I gave up. Keep falling asleep. So getting my BMPCC 4K tomorrow, finally, and I've been watching your videos the last couple of weeks to get prepared for color grading. Is it best to go with your red color space on it or the ARRI? So, Buckman, it depends, man. You're going to have to find out yourself. For me, what I do is I use Red IPP2 mapping all the time. It is really easy. and it will give you a decent look. You have to make sure that you adjust the exposure, but if you do like a face, I recommend doing test shots. Make sure you use one of these, okay? Use a color checker to make sure that your colors are going to be registered right and that you can correct it properly for how you want it, for like a correction or for the look you're trying to do. Okay, get one of these. If you don't have one already, get one. But use this, get some skin in the shot. Okay, good idea to get some like a light in the back so you can see what the highlight roll-off is going to look like, and just experiment with both the ARRI LUT and with the red IPP2 mapping. My opinion is that if you use the ARRI LUT, you're going to want to make sure that you do some gamut mapping on that color space transform node, because the blues and the cyans and sometimes the reds might spike when you use the ARRI LUT. So you need to either use some gamut mapping on the node, or you need to manually adjust it in your color grading pipe. If you do the red IPP2 mapping, it automatically maps the gamut to Rec 709 for you. So it kind of does that all under the hood. So, do what works best for you. That's all I can say about that. I don't want to tell you which one to use. Just, use both. I think that if I was to try to, here's what I would say. The ARRI one, if you want to make sure that your values are being pretty well controlled and more of the skin tones especially stay toward the middle, the ARRI LUT might be easier for you to work with. Okay. If you want the out of the box look, that's pretty much like, I think the easiest one to get the looks that you're going for, and to have the different easily accessible highlight roll-offs, because the ARRI LUT doesn't have different choices on the highlight roll-off, right? It only has the one, and it's a good one. It's using a really good curve for your highlights and everything. And it has a really nice roll-off. But the red IPP2 mapping gives you 4 or 5 different ones that you can pick. And depending on what kind of video you're making, you might want to use medium or hard or soft or very soft or whichever one. So experiment. Okay. I'm not going to tell you which one's best because there is no such thing. Whatever you want to do, however you get the look you want, the easiest and the fastest, that's probably the way to do it. So I hope that helps you, man. And congrats on the purchase. Old vintage tint. Yeah. Mindhunter was green, yellow too. Yep. Maybe the colorist of the film was wearing blue glasses during editing. I always wonder that sometimes. But I'm weird. Here's what's weird about this. Okay, now I hope again I don't sound like a jerk, but I always get confused because I watch some stuff because I do a lot of videos about the Pocket cameras and Blackmagic design stuff and using Resolve. Randomly I'll get, different people's videos, and some of them I really like and some of them not so much. And what I found was really interesting is that when people are saying that they're making a film look, I get really confused on what that means, because I don't know what they're seeing, but it doesn't look like film to me. One of them I saw, all of the greens in the entire piece were tinted brown for some reason. Which I guess if you're going for a certain kind of look, that's fine. But I thought it was weird because I was like, what film stock are they trying to make it look like? Like, not all film makes greens look brown like that. And then it just looked weird. It looked like it was a travel video, right? It was a travel movie, and it was of this beautiful place, but everything was graded to where it looked kind of dingy and not very exciting. So I don't really understand that, because again, like I watch a lot of old movies. I watched a lot of old, like, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s movies. Nothing really looks like that. So I don't know what kind of film they're going with. I don't know what that means. Like I've just become like really confused on what any of that means. Like I know I was just talking about Air Force One last week. Dude, it does, like, that's shot on film. It doesn't look anything like that. So it's like, what film stock are they talking about? Yeah, I didn't say it was a travel film. I said it was a video. But that's the thing. Like if I'm looking at something that's like a travel thing, and the place you went does not look very fun, it looks like depressing. Maybe that's what they were going for, but it's like the subject matter of the video didn't match the film look that they were going for. And I'm just going to say this, not every film look needs to look depressing. It doesn't have to look like that. I just don't understand. I don't understand that kind of thing. But again, I'm the same person that I remember I was in class. I was defending Moulin Rouge and the colors in Moulin Rouge, which everybody was talking crap about how that looked. They said, oh, it's so garish and ugly, and all the reds are just so saturated and all this stuff. And I said, okay, the movie is about the Moulin Rouge, and the subject, it's like a musical, it's high energy. It's like mostly this zany kind of comedy with a very dark ending. And you're complaining that the colors are garish. It's about the Moulin Rouge, man. So maybe I'm the weird one, but like I was like, when I watched that movie, I said, wow, they really went creative with this and it totally works. Like I thought it totally worked. When that movie came out, I thought it was incredible what they did. Baz Luhrmann, I know a lot of people really don't like his stuff, but he does some really creative things that nobody else does. I think it's Strictly Ballroom. He has this amazing shot out on, like, I think it's a rooftop, and there's this big Coca-Cola sign. If I remember correctly, it's just like this big garish Coca-Cola sign. I'm like, I've never seen that before. I mean, at least he's being creative. So I was really kind of surprised, but I kind of think like the look of it needs to fit. Like if the color grade fits what you're trying to do, then it totally works. If the point of making the travel video was to make me not want to visit somewhere because it looks depressing, then you succeeded, right? Like, I mean, that's the thing. Like if I'm making a video about like a beautiful place that I want other people to visit, if that's what I was trying to do, the last thing on my mind is to make the greens not kind of pop, if it's lush. The last thing on my mind is to make it like a really, really low contrast kind of like thing. Okay. I want the image to kind of like pop off the screen. So, it's kind of like if you shot an interview, and I've seen people do this, like if you're shooting an interview for a company and the company is trying to sell their product to people and say, hey, our product will make your life better. The last thing on your mind should be making a depressing looking gray image where the skin tones look like they're dead and you've got the skin tones down below the midtones. That's the last thing you should be doing. And I see that kind of stuff all the time. There was a commercial for, I won't say where the place was, okay? But I was always waiting for like that wipe on, like, how when you're watching an infomercial, and in the infomercial it's like black and white, like it's in black and white, and like there's no color, and like somebody is going, oh, I can't do the thing, and they're like all depressed, and then someone hands them the thing that saves their life, and it's like all bright and colorful, and it everything looks amazing. It's kind of like the Wizard of Oz effect, right? In Wizard of Oz, you go from black and white, the normal real world that Dorothy lives, and then she goes to this fantastical, wonderful place. and it's all in color, and you go, that's a good contrast. That kind of grade and that kind of look totally works with the storytelling. But then I'm watching this commercial, and it's like the whole thing was this gray, low contrast, awful look. It was dreary. It looked like a place I would never want to live. And the whole thing goes trying to sell the product, and I'm like, that was the grade? Like that was the final? It looks like it looked like they left it in log. That's how bad it looked. But people thought that was fine. Maybe it's me. Maybe my eyes are bad. But I always get confused about that kind of stuff. Let's see here. Guess that these guys will regret to have degraded their travel memories, not today, but in 50 years. Yeah, I don't know. Emotion VFX. I mean, I don't know. Like, when I go visit a place, I don't want to look back on it and make it look dreary. I mean, I want it, like, if I don't really do the travel videos because it would just be way too much work in my opinion. But like I do the travel photos, and that's already a lot of work, like just getting the stills right. But doing a travel video of like this wonderful place, like imagine going to Hawaii, and it's not, it doesn't look appetizing. It doesn't look like a place you want to visit because everything is like thrown almost into the mud, and it just doesn't look like this amazing place. I mean, unless you wanted to say that Hawaii is not a great place to visit or something, or like there's something wrong, then I can totally get it. But that's usually not what people do with travel videos. So it's just really weird. Altered Carbon on, oh wait, I missed one. I agree that Moulin Rouge, yeah, I too love the way it looked. Yeah, man, I'm glad I'm not the only one, because I loved it. Like the look of it totally fits, in my opinion, with the story they're telling. It totally works. Like one of my favorite shots is just Harold Zidler. He's like, if you've never seen the movie, he runs the Moulin Rouge. He's like the manager, owner, and all that. And it's just a close up of his sweaty ass face, and he's like all red. He's like sweaty and red, and it's just a close up of him. I'm like, that's the kind of guy I expect to be running the Moulin Rouge. He just totally looks the part, and it's such a striking image. Just the way that it's just like the coloring just totally makes it work. That would not work in like a buddy cop movie or something like that. But for Moulin Rouge, I think it totally works. I think it's great. That's like, if you've never, I believe that's also shot on film. That's shot on film. So how come nobody says that that's the film look? How come nobody says Moulin Rouge is a film look when it's shot on film? I believe it is. Let me just double check. I'm sure it was. 2001, shot on film using Panavision Panaflex Millennium camera and Panavision C-series anamorphic lenses. So, like, why does no one say that that's the film look? I'm always confused about that. It's always like a dreary looking thing when I see people doing it. Yeah. Altered Carbon on Netflix has beautiful and dark colors. Yeah, Buckman. I really like the look of Altered Carbon. I had high hopes for it. Just the first season, I did not like the main character at all. I lasted, I think, 3 episodes, and if you can't get me with the main characters in the first few episodes, I'm gone. And that one, the lead just was not working for me. I might have the same problem with what I'm watching now. I'm watching what's it called, Space Force, and it's not the great or whatever, but like Steve Carell does not work in that role for me. He just doesn't work. Like the only thing keeping me around is really John Malkovich. John Malkovich is he's so funny in that. He's great in that. First or second season, yeah. Love the look of that show. Yeah, I mean the look is good in Altered Carbon. I just didn't like I couldn't get into it. Just because something is on film, it doesn't all have some generic look. Mood, lighting, costume, production design, and work in post. Yeah, I know that, Jason. That's what I'm talking about. I know that. The thing is that when people put on YouTube, they say, here's my film look. It generally is a relatively generic look, a low contrast, dreary looking thing. And I don't understand it. That's what I'm saying. Okay. Generally, when I see it, that's what people are saying. And I watch a lot of movies that are shot on film, and everything you're talking about is exactly right. And that's the point, is that I've seen it where someone says, okay, I've got this thing, I'm trying to make it have this film look. And instead of making it where it looks like Terminator 2, instead of making it look like Terminator 2, they make it look like, I don't know, it's some kind of like super low contrast, sad looking thing almost every time. And I don't get that. So that's what I'm trying to point out. Okay. And as far as they're being or samey same look. So it just depends. Certain movies can look pretty much exactly the same. And especially if you're following normal lighting ratios for the same kind of movie, if you're shooting a high key comedy versus a horror, they can look very much the same. So that's the thing, man. And I just like, it's kind of more, this speaks more to my, I guess, frustration in the community, because there's some really, really good films that have been made that are not like super low saturation, super low contrast kind of looks of films. Like I always go like, have you ever seen Good, Bad, and the Ugly? One of the most famous movies ever made. Have you ever seen The Wizard of Oz? One of the most famous movies, if not the most famous movie ever made, shot on film. In fact, the color in Wizard of Oz, Technicolor was trying to sell their color print, their color film stock. You know, like they're trying to sell that stuff. And I mean, what a thing. I mean, the first movie with that really featured the color in film looks like that. And then people saying that the film look is this other thing that doesn't look anything like that. So I guess I guess the point here is like, if you're trying to emulate a film look, if you're doing like a film print emulation, it doesn't have to look the same. I mean, that's the thing. Like, it doesn't have to look the same. You can have something that totally looks like film, that's very colorful, bright, and higher contrast. You could totally do that. And nobody would really be able to argue with you that it didn't look like film, because there's plenty of films that look like that. They're just not watching enough. That's my opinion. They just don't watch enough film. Trying to think of another high contrast, saturated kind of film. Like a lot of the Sergio Leone stuff, like watch that. The reason why it looks the way it does is because it's shot in deserts. Like Good, Bad, and the Ugly has some, higher contrast. There's some clipping in it. I mean, there's not the highest dynamic range in the world. The shadow, like when they're wearing like the hats, there's a lot of dark shadows in there. That's like out in the broad daylight. Like the first shot, the guy comes up, that's film. A lot of stuff that I see that people say looks like film on YouTube does not look like that. That's one of the most famous movies ever made, Good, Bad, and the Ugly. At least, if not one of the most famous movies ever made, at least the most famous Western ever made, at the very least. So, I think I just get annoyed with the kind of, pigeonholing that if you shoot a film look, if you're doing a film print emulation, or you're trying to make it look like film, it has to be like this low contrast, low saturation kind of thing, or it doesn't really look like a movie. And I totally disagree. It has to fit. The only thing that matters with that is that it fits and the aesthetic makes sense. If it doesn't make sense and it doesn't fit, it's a bad grade. It doesn't matter if you perfectly match a Kodak print film emulation. If it doesn't work with what you're doing, then it's a bad grade. That's my opinion. I just don't believe him. I don't believe him at all. And it's really kind of disappointing, because there's other things I really like. There's some really dumb stuff in it though too. One of the dumb things in it is the low-hanging fruit jokes. They don't work for me. some of it's like, you know, jokes that were made by major media corporations. It's like corporate jokes, and I'm not a big fan of that. But some of the jokes are really good, but it's usually not what Steve Carell does or says. Most of it's John Malkovich. I'll watch that whole show just for John Malkovich. He is hilarious. I don't even think he's doing anything. He's just like, he's the most bothered, annoyed scientist ever, and he just doesn't seem like he has time for anybody. I love that. But Steve Carell just is not working. And Steve Carell, I think he works really, really well in certain roles. I think he was good in The Office, and what was it, Dan in Real Life? Let me just double check if that was him in it. It's with the head on the pancakes, right? Yeah. I actually really like Dan in Real Life. It's a very good rom-com. I really liked it. I think he's pretty good in that. Yeah, I think he's good in those kinds of roles. 40-Year-Old Virgin, he's great. I mean, he totally works for that. I do not believe him as a general for the military. I just don't believe him. I just don't believe him at all. I'm not sure who would have been better in that role, but he just doesn't work. Yeah, I think you know what? Guy from Arrested Development. What's his name? Let's see. Can't remember his name. Yeah, Jason Bateman. I always forget his name. Jason Bateman, I think, would have been great for that role. Jason Bateman has he can do the hair, like the military cut, pretty well. He's got he can get that really clean look, you know? And he does that straight man character really, really well. I think he does the straight man character really, really well. And he also can kind of throw out those little jokes. In Arrested Development, that's what I think he makes that show like. I mean, it already has a good cast, but him as the lead in that works really well. I think he's doing Ozark, so he probably couldn't do something like that. But, you know, he would have been perfect. He would have been absolutely perfect for that role. Not Steve Carell. Not my opinion. Let's see. Glad you agree, Jason. I didn't mean to jump at you or anything. It's just like what you were saying is exactly what I'm talking about. I'm agreeing with you on that. It's just a lot of it's weird because I think it's just people have this idea that you have to keep doing the same thing over and over, that what someone else told you is the right look for your videos or your movie or whatever, and it's just not the case. It's not the case at all. They're just not watching enough film, honestly. They're just not watching enough of it. Do you use tangent devices or graphics tablet for grading? I just found out about a scary thing called carpal tunnel syndrome. Oh, no, dude, I use a mouse. I used to work in VFX. I use the mouse. What you want to do is make sure you're not using your wrist, use your whole arm, and then you use one of these. Works fine. If I had the money, I would probably get one of those color grading consoles. You know, that would probably be better. But I just use a mouse. Just the trick with all that, and I learned this. I learned this with when I was working in visual effects, because I wasn't using like a Wacom pen or anything like that, because I can't do it. I can't get the feel for it. But the trick is take breaks. Like if you're doing a lot of work, you need to every so often, like a couple times an hour, release your hand from the mouse, do your thing, like exercise. Same thing with your eyes. You need to look away from your monitor every once in a while, you know, and then, you know, get back to work. If you do that, you should be fine. At least, you know, I haven't had any problems with it. As far as that goes, the big thing for me was going from using the wrist to using my arm to move, and having enough support on my arm seems to be fine. I haven't had any aches or anything from that. I do get that from playing video games in my thumbs, but I'm not going to stop doing that. So yeah, DJ Tutorials, you're back. He might have better advice on stuff like that, because he does a lot more compositing and visual effects kind of stuff. Yeah. So I'm not even sure what a tangent device is, or what you're talking about. I guess a tangent device might be like the Wacom tablets or whatever. But honestly, like I never could get the feel for a tablet. I just couldn't get it. I love the Gone with the Wind look. So yeah, that's a different look. I mean, all these older films, like if you look at the classics, they all look different. I mean, hardly any of them have what people are calling today the film look. Usually, it's really how the luminance data is being interpreted by the film stock that gives it that film kind of look, or the saturation curves. Like certain film stock will have higher. I forget which particular ones. It's like, the negatives and then the prints. Some of them will have higher saturation in the shadows and lower saturation in the highlights, which will give you one kind of look, and then the other one is having dropped shadows. The shadows being dropped down into desaturation. That, I mean, both of those give. If you do that, if you take your footage and you do like, you take your Luma curve and you kind of invert, you go, a little bit like more saturation in the shadows and then drop the highlights, and then you do it the other way, you'll get a completely different look in your image than you weren't expecting. And then if you do one that's kind of like a curve like this, you have like your shadows, you drop to 0, you go up into the midtones, you have saturation there, and then you drop the highlights down, you'll have a different look too. I mean, that alone can make your image look totally different than what it would have looked without doing anything with the Luma saturation curve. That's why I use those all the time. If I'm trying to go for more of a like natural, grittier, kind of lower saturation look, I might have it drop the saturation in the shadows, bring it up in the midtones, and drop it back down again in the highlights. And then for a lot of the more corporate stuff that I do, I'll do the higher saturation in the shadows and then drop the luminance down. So just do that, and it'll be totally, you'll have a totally different look. Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, crazy color shot on film. Yep. Nobody tries to emulate that look for some reason. That's a famous movie, and that's shot on film. That has the film look because it's shot on film, so it has to. And nobody's trying to make it look like that. It's amazing. It's weird. It's weird to me. There are ergonomic mice you can get. Yeah, Tony and I used to work 12+ hour shifts, 6 to 7 days a week, and had to take breaks. Yep. Yeah, I remember those days, and I don't need to go back to those. Yeah, if especially if you're working a lot of hours, you need to, whenever you can, just kind of like, even right now when I'm sitting here, even like having to scroll through stuff, I'm taking my hands off and kind of making sure I'm resting everything. And especially when I'm working, doing anything with a monitor, you need to look away. It's like every 20 or 30 minutes, you should be looking away from your monitor to rest your eyes, because you're getting that like light just blaring at you all day long. And if you're not careful, you'll be like me and be where you have a chronic problem where you don't blink enough. So my eye doctor tells me. So just rest your eyes, rest your hands. If you do that, you should be okay. I don't think you need to get the tablets. Like, dude, I'm telling you, the little pen tablet things, I cannot use those. Like, I cannot get the feel for it. It's just so weird to me. Best investment for working is a motor desk so you can stand and sit. It's beautiful for the back. Yeah, I've been thinking about getting one of those. I don't have one. There's these crazy 0G desks now where like the desk and everything, like you have to bolt everything down, and then like you sit in the chair and you can like lean back, kind of like the thing in my mind right now is, I think it's Lawnmower Man, where they're in that thing and they like spinning all around. It's like one of those, but you have it in your like as a desk. Maybe one of those, man. If you really need something more ergonomic, maybe you're gonna get one of those. Let's see. Ergonomic chairs, mice, motorized desks are great investments. Yeah, IKEA has a very affordable lift desk. I strongly recommend it. Is that what you have, DJ? Because I need a new desk. So maybe give me a review on that. Thanks, Tony, and everyone around here. Wish I could stay a bit longer, but got stuff to do. Yeah, man. See you later. I got to go make a pizza in like 10 minutes. So I'm making a pizza tonight. Here's tips, right? If you're hanging out, since we're like at the end of this thing, okay? If you're making pizza, okay, and if you're making pizza, if you know me, I cook, and I always give some cooking advice on these things. If you're making pizza, even if it doesn't matter if the dough is coming from like wherever, okay, most of the time when people make a pizza, they get a little annoyed because when you put like pepperonis on it, it bakes, and then you get the pools of grease that are on each of the pepperoni slices. It sucks. Okay, so here's a trick. It's very simple. First of all, there's two tricks. Okay, two tricks to this. When you got your pizza, okay, however you roll it out, I'm not going to go over that because that's a whole nother thing. But when you put the sauce on, use a spoon. The bigger the base of the spoon, the better. You kind of like pour the sauce into the middle of the dough. Then you use the spoon and push it out toward the edges in a spiral. Okay, and you just do it like that, and you will get a much more even kind of coating than you would just trying to spread it on with a knife or something. Okay, so use the spoon, push it out, in a spiral. Then here's the trick with the pepperoni. You put the pepperoni on top of the sauce. Okay, so you'll put it on the sauce. Make sure you put enough for every person who wants some to have like a good amount. You put the cheese on top of the pepperonis. When you do it that way, any of the grease or any of that crap will get baked into the cheese, and it will help flavor the cheese, because it's like that's all flavor, right? Like that fat or whatever that's coming off, if you just pat it off with like a paper towel or whatever, you're going to be losing flavor. So whatever comes off of that pepperoni is going to bake into the cheese, and it's going to flavor, and it's going to taste a lot better. Okay. And then you put on your other toppings. You can put on your vegetables or whatever. I always have when we do it, it's like on mine, it's pepperoni and jalapeno. And then my wife adds mushrooms and pepperoncinis on hers. But that's how you make your pizza better. Okay. Pepperonis under the cheese. Anyway. Let's see here. Shooting a music video on Friday. They wished a 80th horror B-movie style mixed with darkness of The Nun. The BMP 4K seems for occult ritual content. Well, why are they talking about The Nun? Don't make it look like The Nun. Make it look like Nightmare on Elm Street, dude. That's what you should make it look like. That's the good stuff, man. Like Nightmare on Elm Street, Hereditary. Hereditary is a good modern one. Seems weird that they'd be talking about like an 80s horror movie mixed with The Nun. I don't really get that. I don't really get it. Yeah. The Witch, yeah, the Vivitch is another good one. Try to get to look like that. The Vivitch, I really like the look of that. It's like almost feels like it's too dark, but it's not. It's really interesting. Fun hanging out with everyone. Yeah, see you later. Cheap ass reviews. DJ tutorials compared to the other lift desk prices affordable. Yep, The Witch. Yeah, I know what they wanted to. Yeah, man. Yeah, it kind of sucks sometimes when you're like working with clients and they want you to do something that you're like, well, how about we do this? You know what you might be able to get away with? Like, did you show them like, get like a, shoot like a little, it doesn't matter with a still camera or whatever, but shoot like, an image, and then show them like what you want to do, and then show them what you would do with, the other stuff, like with what they want. If you can show them a difference between them and yours, because you're the artist, most likely what you want to do is going to look better. They just don't know it yet. show them what you can do, and they might pick what you want to do instead. I've had to do that with several people that I work with. Usually it's faculty that have no idea what looks good, and you have to show them why your stuff looks better than what they're thinking. If you can do that, you'll get to have the look that you want, and you'll be more proud of it than having to conform with whatever they're doing. You're the expert. You know better about how to make their stuff look good than they do. So try it. I think you'll have success, especially if you can make it look like, one of the really good horror movies. I think you'll win them over. Just getting here. We're about to be done in about 5 minutes. So sorry, Chris, but we're going to be done in a few minutes here. Have you used nitrate? If so, what do you think? I have it, but haven't spent a lot of time with it. What do you mean nitrate? Let me see what you're talking about. Nitrate. Nitrate is an anion, negative ion with the molecular formula NO-3, or a salt with that anion. The name is also used for organic compounds that contain the nitrate ester functional group ONO. Nitrates are common components of fertilizers and explosives. So I guess this is supposed to be something that is explosive. Okay, I'm just kidding, dude. Film convert nitrate. It's a film convert product. What is it that they do exactly? Let me just film convert nitrate. Is it an application? Is it an add-on? Let's see. Nitrate film convert. New feature to give you even more power and control over your color grading. New curves. That doesn't look like a new curve. That looks like a Luma curve. So I'm not sure what that's supposed to mean. Let me play this little video. Okay. So they make it go black and white, and then okay. So at 14 on the filmconvert.com /nitrate, you can get that look very easily using ACES. It might just be like a LUT. 19 classic film stocks. Okay. Now with Cineon log scans, are people still doing Cineon log? New curves. Not sure how that curve is any different, because in DaVinci Resolve you have a Luma and an RGB curve. So I'm not sure how that really changes anything. Pick film size and fully customize the grain. There's tons of different grains, so you can use that with a number of different things. But I don't know. 35 millimeter, okay. Camera tailored profiles. So here's the thing. With any of these kinds of things, you're gonna need it to be tailored to the profile of your camera, which means that if you have a new camera, you're gonna have to wait for them to create a profile for you to really use it right. Might work fine. Okay. What movies look like? Okay. So here's the thing with any of these plugins. It's good if you need it, and if you, if you like it. I'm not sure what they mean when they say that there's new curves, because the image that they show, at least compared to DaVinci Resolve, that's not any different than. In fact, it looks like the classic version of DaVinci Resolve. It just has a Luma and RGB curves that you can use separately. And often the kinds of things that they're doing with these colors, you can do with manipulating the RGB curves. So, I think they're doing a lot of that work for you if they're giving you kind of like a pre-built look, but advanced film grain controls. See, I don't really care about film grain controls, because where I publish, you don't really even see it anyway. And usually I don't want to put film grain on my footage. Cineon log film emulation. So I'm not really sure what that means. So I'd have to use it. Like if they want to send it to me to play with and to do a video, that's fine. I guess they have a free trial of it. I'll play with it. Oh, it's going to ask me for a bunch of. No, I'm not going to. See, if they're going to ask me all this kind of stuff and make me give them my email address, I'm not going to do that. So, yeah, I haven't used it. I just haven't needed it. I just use the regular stuff in DaVinci Resolve to do my work. Whatever they're doing in Film Convert, I guarantee you that you can do using the tools in DaVinci Resolve. The only thing is they've kind of done a lot of that work for you, I think. As far as the tools that they have that are separate, I'm not sure what that would look like because I'm not seeing it in the this thing. So it might be good if it gives you if you use it and it gives you really good results, then totally worth it. If you want to customize your look to be more of what you want instead of what they want, then just learn the tools in Resolve and you can get the same stuff. Let's see here, Film Chroma and Film Luma. I don't know what that means. I see. So you can dial in contrast or saturation of a film stock back to your liking while keeping the authentic film stock colors. Okay. Shoot digital grade film. Okay. Okay. Grain curve. That's interesting. That's interesting. I'll bet. So check this out, dude. Chris, check this out. If you're still here, that grain curve that they're talking about, you could probably do the same thing by doing a keyer. I would imagine you can do the same thing. And you can add grain or remove grain to wherever you want. Interesting. Yeah, man. All good. All right, guys. Catch you later. I'm going to go make a pizza. And I'll see you next time.